Welcome to Politics Now, where we interview newsmakers in politics, and we have probably the #1 newsmaker in politics, the governor of the great state of Nevada, Steve Sisolak. Thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it, Steve. I don't know about that #1, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And
well, we'll make it #1 after this
good.
show. So last year at this time, you'd been elected. You were preparing your State of the State. You had an inherited budget. You were making changes to that budget. It's been a year in office. How do you like it? You still having fun?
I'm loving it. Really, a year ago now, I was just getting wedding plans finalized too.
That's
My wife
true.
took care of that.
That's true. Yeah, exactly.
It's been an exciting year. It's been a real exciting year, and it's been an honor to serve as governor. And I'm really proud of what we did. I've got an incredible team that we assembled that's been really instrumental in helping us move our agenda forward.
What are you proudest of? What's your #1 accomplishment you think in the last year?
I think addressing education like we did is the thing that I'm most proud of. We got teachers a raise, for the first time in 10 years. We got more money allocated for school supplies. We've expanded the education budget greater than it's ever been, and not a day goes by that a teacher doesn't come up to me and say thank you. Then they ran into a dispute with the districts and whatnot, but we kept persevering and moving forward, and I'm proud of what we did with education.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's
they really did put more money into education. The legislature devoted, and you signed bills. All of the marijuana money is now going to education. The per pupil spending went up. You extended the payroll tax to put more money into education. You're even donating your salary to education. Yeah. So now we have the Clark County Education Association, which was the union you referenced just a second ago, that had a dispute with the teachers or with the school district that you helped resolve. They're talking about $1 billion with a pair of tax increases for the ballot. Do you support that?
I don't even know what it is yet. I haven't seen. I know what I've gotten from it, frankly.
Even they don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's come out of the media, what I've learned about this. They have not met with us in relation to what it is. I'm not taking a side with the teachers union or the school district or whatnot. My biggest concern is the students and the teachers. I want to make sure that there is transparency, and there's some auditing in terms of how the money's being spent, because it's raised a lot of questions in the years that have passed. And I want to make sure that every dollar that we allocate gets down into those classrooms, into those teachers who are hardworking and do an incredible job. And the class sizes are big, but they've been underpaid as well when a teacher can no longer afford to buy a home or get a new car. I mean, that's something that's not acceptable to me. And they need to know that somebody's supporting them and has their back, and that's how I feel about teachers and about the students that are in their classrooms.
Yeah. You're, I think, known as sort of an everyman governor, and I think the concern you just raised is the concern that a lot of people have, and that is, we put all this money into education, but what are we getting out of it?
Right.
And how do we know that if we vote on these initiatives, that those dollars are actually going to get to the classroom, they're actually going to get to those teachers you're talking about helping and the students? What guarantees are we going to have that the education is going to improve? And there's some skepticism, isn't it, about any new proposal?
Absolutely. There's a lot of skepticism, and rightfully so, because the money appears when they seem to need the money. And you've got these stories, anecdotal stories about expense accounts and travel and those sort of things, money that's been squandered. And people are willing to pay and contribute to the cost of education, but you want to make sure that you're getting value for the money, and you want to make sure that it's getting to that teacher, that it's not getting stuck in administration, it's not getting put into programs that they don't support. And we need to do a better job, and the district needs to be more open, more transparent in terms of having audited financial statements and getting them online so people can see where every dollar is being spent before you ask for more money. And I think it's incumbent upon the districts to start doing more of that.
You're known as a skeptic of taxes. On the county commission, you were very fiscally conservative when it came to raising taxes. You're now in charge of the entire state budget. Do you think the state of Nevada, regardless of how they raise this money, can afford $1 billion tax increase? Could the economy sustain something like that?
$1 billion is a lot of money to raise, certainly. And I want to make sure, first off, that we're getting all the value we can for the money that we're investing currently. Sure. I mean, sometimes when you get in a bureaucratic situation, they're spending money not realizing these are taxpayer dollars, wherever they're coming from. If they're coming from gaming or room tax or marijuana money or property tax, they're still taxpayer dollars. And you've got to make sure that we're taking full advantage of every single one of those dollars before you can go back and ask for more. And do we need more money in education? Absolutely. But it needs to be better spent, the money that we're putting into education. And I want to make sure that we've got a group together to determine what we can do to improve upon this. And Being in the governor's office has given me a different perspective. You know, the rural districts have different problems than the urban districts, and Washow's different than Clark. But all that being said, everybody wants the same thing. You want to make sure that your school, your child, your grandchild has access to a quality education. And it shouldn't matter based on what your zip code is. The schools in Summerlin or Green Valley or Spring Valley shouldn't be far superior to our urban core schools, because that's not fair based on zip codes.
You've been in there, as I said, for about a year. You've inherited some problems that you probably didn't see coming. In fact, a lot of people did not see these problems coming with some of these state boards and commissions. You're talking about, for example, the pharmacy board hasn't done background checks legally required since the Gibbons administration.
Right.
I mean, that skips over your predecessor who had 4 or 8 years in office. You've stepped in, you've said, okay, the fees that were collected, even though the checks weren't done, return those fees if you can identify the person who paid them and didn't get what they were supposed to get. The rest goes to the unclaimed property fund, so that the board is not going to profit from not doing this. But are there other changes? Are they doing the required checks now?
We are now doing the required checks. They're doing the required checks. But you're right, I did not anticipate the boards and commissions being so problematic. And again, I'm going back to my staff has been incredible in terms of discovering some of the stuff and overcoming some of the obstacles. We've replaced some board members. We are vetting and screening every single applicant that goes on every single board. And I'll be honest, Steve, it would be a lot easier to just kind of turn a blind eye and just keep signing off on the appointments. But we've got to stop the Band-Aid fixes. We've got to start putting quality people on these boards that really care about it and are taking an interest. They have fiduciary responsibility when they're appointed to these boards to make sure that they act appropriately. And there's been things that have happened on some of the various boards that you uncover one thing and look under the hood and there's 50 more problems. And we're going to make changes. There's going to have to be some changes, and my staff is too small in order to be able to handle that. We need full-time people when you've got 600-800 appointments that we have to make to these various boards, and someone can use that appointment to advance their own agenda. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen when they're industry specific. If you've got a dental board and you put dentists on there that want to use it to expand, advance their agenda, that's not right to the industry and it's not right to the consumer. And that's what we're trying to change.
And the dental board is probably the foremost example. You've had staffers who've been fired, you've had some members have resigned. What more needs to be done, specifically with the dental board, but maybe in boards and commissions in general, to get that back to where it needs to be?
Well, I think there needs to be some change, and part of this is legislative. That every session they adopt a few more boards. There's a few more put in place, boards and commissions. And
you think we have too many now?
I think we have too many, and we need to do something to simplify this. I don't know if we need some of the ones that we have, and then we need some general public on board, more of these boards, more general public viewpoints. When you get one doctor regulating another doctor who's got friends that are doctors and those complaints come forward, you want to make sure that the patient who's bringing these complaints forward has a good voice, not somebody who's trying to protect their buddy's business because they happen to know the gal who owns that practice, or vice versa. And that's a problem. The public needs to have confidence that when they come because they feel that they've been wronged by a provider, and the board is there to to handle the complaints, that they're handled appropriately. And there are statutes in place how these boards are supposed to conduct business, and we're going to make sure that they follow them.
Yeah, and that was the problem with the dental board. You had regular people complaining, hey, this dentist didn't do very good work, and nothing happened.
The horror stories when they would come to Board of Examiners meetings were just, it was unbelievable. Your heart comes out. I mean, drilling through the roof of somebody's mouth and causing severe damage, and they had $20,000 of work done that then somebody's got to repair for $30,000. They file a complaint. Nobody will even hear it. They're dismissed out of hand. That's just not right. And the public needs to be protected. Not only does that patient that came forward need to have recourse, but the general public needs to be protected to make sure this doesn't continue to happen and that bad work isn't covered up.
Yeah. There's other issues with regard to boards and commissions. It was reported recently in the Review Journal that the boards and commissions in general have hired to the tune of $2.6 million lawyers and lobbyists to do lobbying, sometimes even lobbying at odds with the state's position. And it was discovered during these Board of Examiners meetings that the state does not have control over those hires and that lobbying agenda. Does that need to change?
Something needs to change, and that came forward on when we saw some of the contracts that were coming forward, that they're hiring their own attorneys and they're hiring their own lobbyists. And you're right, sometimes they lobby against what the agenda. We're going to bring forward some proposed changes as it relates to those boards, and I've got lobbyists representing those boards that are going to be lobbying against our efforts. And that's a real, these are the same thing, even though they're paid for usually with fees, what we'd call it the county an enterprise fund, that it's not general fund money, it's done through the licensing. They still should be representing the population as a whole. And when you've got all these independent lobbyists out there, and some of my lobbyist friends probably won't like this, but you question if they should really be up there. I mean, now some of the cities and jurisdictions send their own people up there. Others hire somebody to come up there. And then when you hire somebody, they've got a paid with a business that's making campaign contributions, and then they come up with a city or county that they're representing, and they're up there representing those, and they're meeting with legislators and kind of getting access and providing information that I question if it's in the best interest of the general public.
A lot of this probably seems familiar to you because people probably know you were a former regent, and there was a time when all the different universities would lobby independently. UNLV for its needs, UNR for its needs. Eventually it was decided that all those universities would speak with one voice through the chancellor's office. Should something similar happen? Should all these boards and commissions have to go through the governor's office so that the state executive branch speaks with a single voice?
Well, I don't know if they should go through the governor's office, but they're going to need to go through somewhere. There's going to need to be some caveat on this in terms of what they're lobbying for or what they're lobbying against. And we had to come up this past session where boards are lobbying against each other on a dry needling bill. I didn't even know what dry needling was.
I learned of it too.
And it came as a total surprise to me where you've got one board here, another board here, and they've got different issues. And I don't know if we're coming up with the best laws based on that, or whose lobbyist has the most influence to get some of these things passed. There has to be a better way to do this so that we can not circumvent the process, but make sure that the legislators who are formulating this policy get access to good quality information.
Yeah, there was a bill brought, I believe, during your predecessor, Governor Sandoval's administration. Some people wondered, why they brought it, and that was so that the governor could replace members of boards and commissions. I think we know now, right? We know now why that's.
We sure do.
And I bet you're grateful to have that power.
I am very grateful to have that power, and sometimes, it's still not enough because you get someone on there, they get appointed to 4 years, and even, I don't know how every other governor did it. We vet them and we look at their backgrounds and their applications and so forth and get as much input as we possibly can. I don't know if everybody else did that, but sometimes someone gets appointed and they had an agenda that you didn't realize that they had. It'd be nice to be able to get them off of there when you find out something's going wrong, that they're not using that to increase their competitive advantage over one of their colleagues or their competitive businesses. And it happens. It clearly happens, and we've got to get the right people in there. And you're asking a lot of the people that go on the boards too, and I tell them that when we put them on there. We're asking them to serve for basically no money and interrupt their schedules. And if you do it the right way, and I've said this all along, it takes a lot of work. I mean, you get a stack this thick, then you're going into a board meeting. You're supposed to be reviewing based on accurate information and data that's provided for you. And it's important that the board members all do that.
Another one of your big accomplishments as governor was putting into effect the regulation of the marijuana industry with the Cannabis Compliance Board that's getting up and running now. You have a task force in the interim. We recently saw a marijuana testing lab have its license suspended because it had been manipulating the amount of THC, which then if the THC is higher, you can sell it for more at the dispensary level. Is that a flaw in the system that we have the growing facilities paying the labs to do the testing, and there seems like there might be a potential conflict. You pay the lab, they inflate it for you, and you get more money at the retail level, and the customer kind of gets ripped off. Is that a flaw? Does that need to change?
Well, there's currently an issue there that needs to be addressed. I mean, whether these were done intentionally or they were done through bad testing still remains to be seen. But you've got the lab industry basically going out and recruiting growers to say, look, we'll test your product, and if it's kind of a wink and a nod, hey, look, bring me your stuff. I don't know if that's what happened here, but it's incumbent upon us to get a handle on this. I regret that the full funding for the Cannabis Compliance Board doesn't come in until July of next year, because it's causing us some problems. Some of the testing that comes forward, especially when you're dealing on the medical side, when you're dealing with bad batches, whether that's mold or heavy metals or whatnot in there, you've got people with compromised immune systems that are taking this product to relieve pain and cures and whatnot. You can't have them ingesting or smoking a product that's bad,
Yeah.
that doesn't meet regulations. So we need to do more on the testing front and see that it's totally independent. And I know they've got associations that sometimes overlap, and there's friendships and relationships, and that's problematic.
Yeah. Was there ever any thought given to maybe having state-funded independent laboratories to do that? Is that something that would be doable in our current system, or no?
There was thought about doing that. There's been more discussion about doing that. It's something we're probably going to be talking about once we get this Cannabis Compliance Board up and fully function, if it can be done independently. Whether it can be done through the university systems or something like that. Yeah, we have to do something to get an independent. I mean, they have to be truly independent labs. Yeah. And unless they're state-owned, I don't know how you make them truly independent, because they'd always be subjective to, influence.
Yeah. Well, another one of your accomplishments, in addition to being the first member of the Clark County Commission to go on to higher office since Lorraine Hunt, you were the first Democrat to be elected governor in 20 years. The Democrats control the Assembly and the Senate for the first time in a long time. And redistricting is coming up. And right as the Democrats are about to be in charge of redistricting and get to draw the maps, with a Supreme Court decision at their back that said gerrymandering is really a political question, not something that the court's going to adjudicate. Along comes a ballot initiative that says we should take that out of the hands of the legislature and put it into an independent commission. What do you think of that idea?
Well, it's clearly not. I don't think the independence of these independent commissions sometimes can be called into question.
Yeah.
Anytime it's
because they're being appointed by legislative leaders.
Exactly, they're being appointed by leaders, and they have biases, and they have ideas, and they have thoughts. I'm focused more on other things as it relates into the next session. We'll have lines drawn. Working with the legislature, I had a great relationship with both the Speaker and the Majority Leader. We met on a weekly basis to talk about bills that were moving through the House, and I think we got to a good place that way. Didn't have to do a lot of vetoing, and things were pretty popular. I think that we passed in terms of legislative agenda, and hopefully we'll be able to do that again. Yeah.
So you wouldn't support the that independent commission ballot initiative, assuming it gets to the ballot?
I don't think that it would be truly independent. I think that you're always going to have, when you have appointees, it's not independent, and that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Okay. You signed an executive order recently on climate change, and that follows some other efforts that the state's been doing on climate change. That's one of the things you've been doing. Your executive order said all state agencies have to work together to figure out how they, in their particular area, can be more environmentally friendly, how they can align their operations with a broader agenda. A lot of people look at that and they say, well, is it really going to make that big of a deal? What do you tell them when they ask?
I think it's absolutely going to make a big deal. You lead by example, and if you don't, set a good example, you're not going to have good prospects moving forward and people following in the different areas. Example, when we buy vehicle purchases, which are pretty regular on our examiners meeting, I've encouraged, hey, look, let's get some hybrid vehicles on here. Let's get some vehicles that are electric vehicles on here. In terms of providing more energy efficiency in our buildings, that's something that we do I don't like to do as I say, not as I do. I think do as I do is what I'd like to do, and I think that it's important that we set a good example. And I said early on in my State of the State address, I'm not going to spend a second debating whether or not climate change is real. All you have to do is look at what's going across the country. It's real. And I mean, we were fortunate this year. We didn't have any huge wildfire disasters. As much as California had some that were high profile. I met the California governor, they had a milder season than they'd anticipated it could have been. But that just leaves us for next year, where there's going to be more undergrowth. We have to get a handle on some of this stuff and make sure that we do the best we can.
And that really is an issue that you have to deal with. I mean, as governor, you have to deal with wildfires, you have to deal with flooding, you have to deal with drought. On all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And people don't understand the drought or the fire or the flood doesn't recognize the border between Nevada and California. It goes right across that. So they're multi-jurisdictional issues, and we have to be on the same page. That's why I've got the Western governors are coming here next week. And these are the issues that we talk about: invasive species and wildfires and floods and that sort of thing that are affecting every state in the West, and how we can work collaboratively to make sure that we come up with a better result.
Speaking of a drought, there is the issue of that Southern Nevada Water Authority's pipeline project. It's sort of in limbo now. The need has not really become acute because of the conservation efforts that have been going on. You dealt with that as a county commissioner. You came out against it when you in your campaign for governor. Now, obviously, the governor cannot tell the state engineer, "Okay, we're not doing this.
Right.
Don't accept the application." Yeah. Anyone can ask, right, "Can we use this water?" But where does that stand? And from your perspective as governor now, are you convinced that it's the wrong way to go?
I don't see the pipeline as being the right way to go. I mean, we spent a lot of time studying it when I was on the county commission. I served on the water authority, the district board. I think we should have invested a lot more money in desalinization than we did, because I think that's the way of the future, to get more water available to us. I don't know what climate change is going to hold in store for us, but I've gotten to know our northern Nevada a lot better than I did, and our rurals, and I don't want to detrimentally impact them to an extent. I spent a lot of time dealing with some of our tribal communities that water is something that is sacred to them, and they feel that they have not been involved in the discussion, and I want to make sure that they are involved in the discussion. But this got a little ahead of itself, I think, with Ms. Mulroy on the Water Authority back then, and it's something that she felt very, very strongly of, and we've got ranches up in northern Nevada now that are owned by the Southern Nevada Water Authority that is still pretty controversial up in those areas, but right now it's not something that is moving forward.
Yeah. In terms of the issue of the ranchers up there, they were purchased essentially for their groundwater, and not to be run as actual ranches.
Right.
Yeah. So that.
But now they're being run as ranches.
Yeah.
And they're producing alfalfa, and they're producing cattle, and it's taking a different model, and I think that's something that, I previously was on those boards. I've got other colleagues that are on those boards now, and something I'm sure they're going to have to look at.
They could probably unload those ranches to other people if they decided.
I don't know what the value of the ranches are if they've gone up like everything else has, but they're well run right now. They're doing a lot.
You were a local government official for a long time on the county commission. You dealt with a lot of issues there. One issue is the issue of homelessness. The city of Las Vegas has recently passed an ordinance that bans camping on the streets. There's another ordinance that's under consideration that says when street cleaning comes along, you can't be there. Is that the right way to go? And does the state have a role in helping to alleviate this problem that we're seeing, not just in Nevada, but we're seeing it all?
We're seeing this was a lively topic of discussion at our governor's conference that we had, and I'm sure it'll be again next week. Arresting and ticketing homeless people, I don't think is the right way to go. I can tell you our officers don't want to be picking them up and putting them back in squad cars and taking them down to the detention center. It's a big problem, but there's a multiple of problems there. You've got the addiction problem with homelessness, you've got the mental health issue relates to homelessness, and you've got a group of people that are one paycheck away from becoming homeless, or they're sleeping in their cars. I want to be more child focused on this in terms of this is affecting our children in the future with all of these issues, the homelessness, the water, the conservation that you talked about, the education issues. How is this going to affect the next generation? It's one thing how it's going to affect you or I, but how is it going to affect grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and what are we doing to them? And I think we're going to have to make some thoughtful, hard discussions and decisions as it relates to some of these things, because I think it all comes back to the same thing. You talk about quality education. You can't expect the kid to get a quality education or student if they don't get food and they don't have a place to live. I mean, it's unrealistic to say, well, just let's throw some more money and let the teacher fix it. That's not going to happen. You've got to make sure that they have a good meal and they have a place to live and their parents can have a job. Those all have to be centered and equally important.
And so, just getting back to that ordinance itself, is that the right way to go, or do you think the more holistic approach that you're talking about to address the causes, the root causes, whether it's addiction, whether it's mental health, whether it's joblessness, and job training, should that be done, or is this ordinance the right way to go?
I don't think that the ordinance is going to solve the problem. I think we need to take a more holistic approach, and it's not, for those viewers that are here, it's not a Nevada problem. I mean, I talked to every governor has this same problem. Governor Newsom in California, when we were driving, the First Lady and I, between meetings, they're sleeping under the bypasses of the freeway, all over downtown San Francisco, all over the place there's people. It's become a health issue. in terms of no restroom facilities for these folks. I know it's a problem, you know, with disposing. There's needles that they're finding, and you know, they've got their belongings in a shopping cart, and you need the safety of the homeless folks. So we need an overall approach. You can't fix the homeless situation if they don't have a place to get a job, or if they don't have a place where they can get food, or they can
take a shower.
Take a shower. They all come together. How are you going to expect them to get a job if they can't take a shower, they don't have a phone, or they don't have a place to get mail in terms of being notified? So we have to be more holistic, and I think that that's a direction that I want to go in as it relates to all of this.
All right, well, Governor Sisolak, thank you so much for coming down. We really appreciate you taking the time to do that, and we'll have you back soon.
Steve, it's a real pleasure. Invite me back. I'd love to be here.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
we
man.
will.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Great to see you. Thank you.